John Adams, by David McCullough. Introduction. Imagine this. You're standing in a palace, the air thick with history and unspoken tension. You've just walked through halls crowded with lords and ministers, all of them staring at you. Not with admiration, but with a cold curiosity. You are the enemy. A rebel. A man whose name, not long ago, was on a list of traitors to be hanged. And now, you stand before the king himself. King George III. The very man you defied, the monarch you helped overthrow in your homeland across a vast ocean. Your heart is pounding. Your voice feels shaky. You know that the future of your young, fragile nation rests, in this moment, on your shoulders. You are the first ever minister from the United States of America to the Court of St. James in London. This isn't a scene from a movie. This was the reality for John Adams in 1785. And as he stood there, face to face with the king, he spoke not of anger or defiance, but of restoring the old good nature and the old good humor between two peoples who shared the same language, religion, and blood. The king, visibly moved, confessed that he had been the last to consent to America's independence, but now, he would be the first to meet its friendship. It's one of the most powerful, quietly dramatic moments in American history. And it's just one of hundreds of stories that bring to life the incredible journey of John Adams, as told in the Pulitzer Prize-winning masterpiece by the great historian David McCullough. Today, we're going to step into the world of that book. And I promise you, by the end of our time together, you won't just know the facts about John Adams. You will understand the man. You will feel his doubts, his ambitions, his loneliness, and his unshakable courage. You'll discover that the founding of a nation wasn't a clean, straightforward process led by flawless heroes. It was messy, difficult, and driven by passionate, stubborn, brilliant, and deeply human people. And in the story of John Adams, you'll find a powerful lesson in what it truly means to have character, to stand for what you believe in, even when you stand alone. Book summary. So, who was this John Adams? Before he was a president, before he was a diplomat, he was a farmer's son from a small town in Massachusetts called Braintree. He wasn't a tall, commanding figure like George Washington. He wasn't a smooth, universally charming genius like Benjamin Franklin. He was short, stout, and by his own admission, often vain, cranky, and quick to anger. From a young age, he had a burning ambition, a desire for what he called distinction. He filled his diary with searingly honest self-criticism. He called himself puffy, vain, conceited. He despaired over his own laziness and his tendency to daydream his life away. He wrote, "I totter with every breeze. This is not the stuff of legends. This is the sound of a real person struggling to find his way." His father, a deacon and a farmer, wanted him to become a minister. But John was drawn to the law. There's a wonderful story from his youth. He told his father he didn't want to go to college, he just wanted to be a farmer. His father, a wise man, simply said, "All right." The next day, he took John out to the marshes to spend the entire day cutting thatch, grueling, muddy, back-breaking work. That night, his father asked him if he was satisfied with being a farmer. Though exhausted, John proudly said he liked it just fine. But his father replied, "Well, I don't. So you'll go back to school." And he did. It was this combination of ambition and self-doubt, of a brilliant mind and a restless heart, that defined him. He worked tirelessly, becoming one of the most respected lawyers in Massachusetts. He read voraciously, history, philosophy, poetry. "You will never be alone with a poet in your pocket," he would later tell his son. But the most important decision of his life had nothing to do with law or politics. It was his marriage to Abigail Smith. She was the daughter of a minister, intelligent, witty, and as fiercely principled as he was. Their partnership is one of the greatest love stories in American history. They were more than husband and wife, they were intellectual equals, confidants, and each other's dearest friend, as they signed their letters. Their correspondence, spanning over 1,000 letters, gives us an intimate window into their world. While he was away for months, even years, serving the country, she ran the farm, raised the children, and served as his most trusted advisor. It was Abigail who famously wrote to him while he was shaping a new nation, urging him to remember the ladies and not put unlimited power into the hands of husbands. She saw, with perfect clarity, the potential for tyranny everywhere, even in the home. It was this profound sense of justice that led Adams to one of the defining moments of his early career. In 1770, Boston was a powder keg. British soldiers, taunted by a mob, opened fire, killing 5 civilians. It became known as the Boston Massacre. The city was in an uproar, demanding vengeance. The soldiers were arrested, but no lawyer in Boston would defend them. It was career suicide. Except one. John Adams. He believed, with every fiber of his being, that every person deserved a fair trial, and that the law was more important than popular opinion. He knew he would be scorned, that he risked his reputation, his practice, even his family's safety. But he took the case. In the courtroom, he argued that the soldiers had fired in self-defense, provoked by a motley rabble. He famously told the jury, "Facts are stubborn things, and whatever may be our wishes, our inclinations, or the dictums of our passions, they cannot alter the state of facts and evidence." He won. He secured the acquittal of the captain and most of the soldiers. It was an act of profound courage and principle, and though it made him unpopular in the short term, in the long run, it solidified his reputation as a man of unshakable integrity. "It was," he later said, "one of the best pieces of service I ever rendered my country." This commitment to principle, even when it was unpopular, would carry him into the heart of the American Revolution. As a delegate to the Continental Congress in Philadelphia, he quickly became a leading voice for independence. While many delegates, like the eloquent John Dickinson of Pennsylvania, still hoped for reconciliation with Britain, Adams saw it as a fantasy. He was impatient, relentless, and a powerful force in debate. Thomas Jefferson, who was quiet and reserved in Congress, later described Adams as the Colossus of independence. He said that when Adams spoke, he was not graceful nor elegant, but he spoke with a power of thought and expression that moved us from our seats. For weeks, Adams argued, debated, and pushed. He served on countless committees, working from dawn until late at night. He drove himself, and everyone around him, to confront the inevitable. When Richard Henry Lee of Virginia finally introduced the Resolution for Independence in June of 1776, it was John Adams who immediately seconded it. And when Dickinson made one last, powerful speech against the separation, it was Adams who rose to answer him, delivering what was likely the greatest and most important speech of his life. No notes of his speech survive, but we know its effect. He laid out the case for independence with logic, passion, and a profound sense of the historical moment. He convinced the wavering delegates. On July 2, 1776, the Continental Congress voted for independence. Adams was ecstatic. He wrote to Abigail that this day would be the most memorable epocha in the history of America, celebrated by future generations with pomp and parade, with shows, games, sports, guns, bells, bonfires, and illuminations. He was off by 2 days, of course, as we celebrate the formal adoption of the Declaration on July 4th, but his vision of the celebration was prophetic. He knew the cost. "I am well aware of the toil and blood and treasure that it will cost us to maintain this declaration," he told her. But the end was more than worth the means. With independence declared, Adams' work was far from over. In fact, the most difficult and lonely years of his life were about to begin. He was sent to France as a diplomat, tasked with securing an alliance and financial support for the war. This meant leaving Abigail and his children for years, crossing the Atlantic in the dead of winter on a small frigate, facing storms and the threat of capture by the British Navy. He arrived in Paris to find a world utterly alien to him. It was a world of aristocratic splendor, intricate etiquette, and diplomatic subtlety, for which he felt completely unsuited. And at the center of it all was the American ambassador, Benjamin Franklin. Franklin was a living legend in Paris. He was adored by everyone, from the king's ministers to the ladies of the court. He was seen as the wise, rustic philosopher from the New World. He was charming, patient, and moved through French society with effortless grace. John Adams was none of those things. He was blunt, impatient, and couldn't speak French well. He was horrified by the chaotic state of the Commission's finances and Franklin's seemingly casual approach to his duties. While Franklin charmed his way through Paris dinners, Adams sat at his desk, trying to bring order to the paperwork. He saw Franklin as too accommodating to the French, while Franklin and the French saw Adams as rigid, arrogant, and difficult. Mr. Adams, the French foreign minister observed, is a decided character. It was a clash of styles and personalities. Adams felt isolated and useless. "I am but a man of letters," he wrote, feeling like a mere clerk. His loneliness was immense. He missed Abigail terribly. "My heart is with you," he wrote, "but my duty is here." But in this period of frustration, Adams showed his true mettle. Sent on a mission to Holland to secure a loan, a task that seemed impossible, he refused to give up. He found the Dutch cautious, slow, and unwilling to risk their money on the uncertain American cause. Another man might have packed his bags and gone home. But Adams launched a one-man campaign. He learned Dutch history, cultivated friendships with influential editors and politicians, and wrote article after article for the Dutch newspapers, explaining the American cause. He called it militia diplomacy. He broke all the rules of traditional statecraft. He went directly to the Dutch people, making the case for America as a sister republic. It was a long, exhausting struggle. At one point, he fell gravely ill with a nervous fever, likely malaria, and nearly died. But he persisted. And in 1782, after the American victory at Yorktown changed the political landscape, he succeeded. He secured a crucial loan and, even more importantly, Dutch recognition of the United States. It was the first country to recognize America after France. It was a stunning personal triumph, achieved through pure, unyielding stubbornness. As he later wrote, "Thanks to God that He gave me stubbornness when I know I am right." His diplomatic career culminated in the peace negotiations with Great Britain. Alongside Franklin and John Jay, he defied Congress's instructions to follow the lead of the French. Suspecting that France wanted to limit America's power, the three Americans negotiated directly with the British, securing a treaty that was incredibly favorable to the United States. It established generous boundaries, from the Atlantic to the Mississippi, and secured vital fishing rights off Newfoundland, a point Adams fought for with all his might, drawing on his New England roots. And so, in 1785, came that powerful moment we began with, John Adams, the former rebel, standing before King George III as the representative of a free and independent nation. It was the closing of a circle, a testament to how much the world had changed, and how much he had done to change it. After nearly 10 years abroad, Adams finally returned home, hoping to retire to his farm, which he now called Peacefield. But the country called him once more. When George Washington was unanimously elected the first president, John Adams was elected vice president. It was, he quickly discovered, the most insignificant office that ever the invention of man contrived. His role was to preside over the Senate, a body in which he had no vote unless there was a tie. For a man of action and strong opinions, it was a form of torture. He fell into a political blunder almost immediately, arguing that the president should have a grand title like His Highness. The idea was roundly mocked. He was ridiculed in the press as his rotundity. It was a painful, humiliating start, and a sign of how out of step he was with the more democratic mood of the country. For 8 years, he served loyally under Washington, but he was largely excluded from the inner circle of the administration. He watched with growing alarm as political parties began to form around the two giants in Washington's cabinet, Alexander Hamilton, the Federalist Secretary of the Treasury, and Thomas Jefferson, the Republican Secretary of State. Adams despised partisan politics. A division of the Republic into two great parties, he wrote, was the thing he dreaded most. In 1796, when Washington decided to retire, Adams was elected president, defeating Thomas Jefferson by a razor-thin margin of just 3 electoral votes. Jefferson, as the runner-up, became his vice president. Adams inherited a nation on the brink of war. The French Revolution had descended into the Reign of Terror, and the new government in France, the Directory, was hostile to the United States. They viewed the Jay Treaty, an agreement between the U.S. and Britain, as a betrayal. French privateers began seizing American ships on the high seas. The country was deeply divided. The Republicans, led by Jefferson, sympathized with France and feared a war would align America with monarchical Britain. The High Federalists, a faction within Adams' own party led by Alexander Hamilton, were clamoring for war. They saw it as a chance to crush the pro-French party at home and forge a military alliance with Britain. Adams was caught in the middle. His own cabinet, a holdover from Washington's administration, was secretly loyal to Hamilton and worked to undermine him at every turn. Secretary of State Timothy Pickering, in particular, was a zealous advocate for war. The crisis came to a head with the XYZ affair. Adams had sent a 3-man peace commission to Paris, but they were met with a shocking demand. 3 French agents, referred to in the secret dispatches as X, Y, and Z, told the Americans that negotiations could only begin if they paid a massive bribe to the French foreign minister, Talleyrand. When the dispatches were made public, the country erupted in patriotic fury. Millions for defense, but not 1 cent for tribute, became the rallying cry. The High Federalists saw their chance. War seemed inevitable. Hamilton began dreaming of leading a new American army to glory, perhaps even to conquer Spanish territories in the Americas. This was the great test of Adams' presidency. He could have ridden the wave of popular anger, declared war, and likely ensured his re-election. It would have been the easy political move. But he didn't. He believed, as he wrote, that great is the guilt of an unnecessary war. He strengthened the Navy, the wooden walls he had always championed, and stood firm against French aggression. But he refused to ask for a declaration of war. He kept the door to peace open, even a crack. Then, against the unanimous advice of his cabinet and the fury of the High Federalists, he did the unthinkable. In February 1799, he learned through back channels that Talleyrand, seeing America's new resolve, was now willing to negotiate in earnest. Without consulting anyone, Adams nominated a new peace minister to France. It was an act of stunning political courage. The High Federalists were enraged. They felt betrayed. Hamilton called Adams insane. The Federalist Party was split in 2. Adams knew he was risking his political future, but he didn't care. "I desire no other inscription over my gravestone," he later wrote, "than, 'Here lies John Adams, who took upon himself the responsibility of peace with France in the year 1800. The mission succeeded. A treaty was signed, and war was averted. But the political cost was immense. Hamilton, furious, published a scathing pamphlet attacking the president's character and fitness for office. The Federalist Party went into the election of 1800 utterly divided. The result was predictable. Adams lost the presidency to Thomas Jefferson. And so, in the pre-dawn darkness of March 4, 1801, his last day in office, John Adams climbed into a public stagecoach and left the new capital city of Washington, heading home to Quincy. He did not stay for Jefferson's inauguration. It was a quiet, unceremonious end to a long and tumultuous public life. He returned to Peacefield, a private citizen at last, feeling rejected by the country he had served for over a quarter of a century. The final chapter of Adams' life, however, is perhaps the most moving. For the next 25 years, he lived as Farmer John of Quincy. He read, he wrote, he worked on his farm, and he relished the company of his family and grandchildren. The bitterness of his defeat slowly faded, and a new, extraordinary chapter began. In 1812, their mutual friend, Drive Benjamin Rush, orchestrated a reconciliation between Adams and Jefferson. Adams, making the first move, sent a short, friendly note to Monticello. Jefferson responded with warmth and affection. And so began one of the greatest correspondences in American history. Over the next 14 years, the two old revolutionaries, the North and South poles of the American Revolution as Rush called them, exchanged more than 150 letters. They wrote about everything: history, philosophy, religion, their memories of the Revolution, their families, their health, their books. They debated, they reminisced, they consoled each other in their old age. It was a magnificent renewal of their friendship, a testament to their shared love for the country they had helped create. They had been rivals, separated by politics and temperament. But in the twilight of their lives, they found common ground again, as fellow survivors of a heroic age. In 1818, Abigail died. They had been married for 54 years. Adams was heartbroken. "The bitterness of death is past," he wrote to Jefferson. "The grim spoiler has no sting left for me." But he carried on, his mind as sharp as ever, even as his body failed. He lived to see his son, John Quincy Adams, become the 6th President of the United States in 1825. "No man who ever held the office of President," the old man remarked, "would congratulate a friend on obtaining it." As the 50th anniversary of the Declaration of Independence approached in 1826, the country looked to its two surviving founding fathers. Both were now frail and confined to their homes. Adams was 90, Jefferson was 83. Both seemed determined to live to see that great jubilee. Asked for a toast for the celebration in Quincy, Adams offered, "Independence forever." On the evening of July 3, Jefferson, in his bed at Monticello, awoke and asked, "Is it the 4th?" Told it would be soon, he slept again. In Quincy, on the morning of July 4, as cannon fire echoed in the distance, Adams awoke, and was told the date. "It is a great day," he said. "It is a good day." Thomas Jefferson died at Monticello shortly after noon on the 4th of July. Hours later, hundreds of miles to the north, John Adams, his family gathered around him, whispered his last words, "Thomas Jefferson survives." He was wrong, of course. Jefferson had passed away just hours before. But in that final, poignant thought, he was connected to his old friend and rival, bound together by the great cause that had defined their lives. John Adams died late that afternoon, on the 50th anniversary of the day he had done so much to bring into being. It was a conclusion so poetic, so seemingly providential, that the entire nation saw it as a sign of divine favor. Commentary. The story of John Adams, as David McCullough tells it, is not just a biography of a president. It's a deep and moving exploration of character. Adams' life reads like a powerful lesson on what it means to be human, to be ambitious and flawed, but to strive, always, to do the right thing. What I find most profound about Adams is that he was not a natural leader in the way we often think of one. He wasn't blessed with Washington's stoic grace or Jefferson's soaring idealism. He was, in many ways, his own worst enemy. His vanity, his insecurity, his explosive temper, these were real and often damaging parts of his personality. He knew it better than anyone. His diary is a testament to a lifelong struggle for self-improvement. And yet, in the moments that mattered most, his character shone through. He stood for the rule of law when it was unpopular. He fought for independence when others wavered. And he chose peace when war would have been the easier, more popular path. He was, as Abigail said, made of oak, not willow. He might break, but he would never bend when it came to his principles. His story is also a powerful reminder of the importance of partnership. The relationship between John and Abigail Adams is, for me, the soul of this book. It wasn't just a romance, it was a working alliance. She was his anchor, his intellectual sparring partner, his most honest critic, and his unwavering source of strength. He could not have done what he did without her. Their life together shows us that the greatest achievements are rarely accomplished alone. We all need a dearest friend to share the journey with. So, what can we take from this incredible life? I think there are a few simple but powerful actions we can draw from his example. First, take the time to read primary sources. Go and read the letters of John and Abigail Adams. You don't need to be a historian. When you read their own words, written in the heat of the moment, with all their fears and hopes laid bare, history stops being a dry collection of facts and becomes a living, breathing story about real people. It connects you to the past in a profound way. Second, think about what your non-negotiable principles are. For Adams, it was the rule of law, justice, and the good of his country. He was willing to sacrifice his popularity, his career, and even his friendships for those principles. In a world that often pressures us to compromise, his life is a powerful call to define what we stand for and to have the courage to defend it. And finally, cherish your partnerships. Whether it's with a spouse, a friend, or a mentor, the kind of honest, supportive, and challenging relationship that John and Abigail shared is a source of immense power and resilience. It's a reminder that the people we surround ourselves with can either hold us back or lift us up to be the best versions of ourselves. John Adams' story is, in the end, a story of a life well lived. A life filled with struggle, sacrifice, and sorrow, but also with love, purpose, and an unyielding commitment to a cause larger than himself. He was not a perfect man, but he was a great one. And in his journey, we find not a distant, marble statue of a founder, but a deeply human and inspiring guide for our own. That was the book summary of John Adams by David McCullough. We've touched on the major moments of his incredible life today, but I'll be completely honest with you, a summary can only ever be a map. The real treasure is in the journey itself. The real magic happens when you read the book, when McCullough's masterful storytelling pulls you into the 18th century, and you feel the grit and the glory of it for yourself. This summary is just a starting point, a way to see if this story calls to you. If anything we've talked about has sparked your curiosity or touched your heart, I truly encourage you to pick up a copy. Reading it isn't just about learning history, it's an experience that can genuinely change how you think about leadership, character, and the human spirit. The link to the book is in the description. Also, if you found this summary valuable, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. It helps more than you know, and it ensures you won't miss our next journey into another life-changing book. Let's keep learning and growing together.